thanks for having me. This is really great to come back to Alpine. I got to do a visit here last year and got to see the golf course and all the good work that Ryan's doing out there. And looking forward to coming back again when it's a little warmer, a little more conducive for being outside. But looking forward to getting into this. So this is one of the topics I think is really interesting, and that especially for this group, because there's a lot of reasons why we do what we do, but there's also an important factor about how to communicate it and why to communicate it, and so a lot of feelings with that. But before I get into that, just want to talk a little bit about how we're distributed as agronomists. So I've been on board for just over a year now, and I actually saw almost 200 golf courses last year, which was really, really good. And so I'm based in Maryland in the Mid-Atlantic. My main corridor of travel is Richmond to about here. Elliot Dowling, who you'll be hearing from later, moved a little bit north. He was in the Mid-Atlantic for 10 years. And we kind of overlap a little bit. And I've been privileged to travel up through New England and up into Canada. See a lot of really great things. Loving what I do. This is a really great team of guys. This is, something what we offer is that, we've got all these guys across the country just visiting golf courses and working national championships, and we're just a really good group. And it's amazing how well the intercommunication is. So we have questions or problems and things come up, we really help each other out. It's really great. And, we really provide a really, really wide-ranging service and experience through our experiences to all your facilities. So one of the things I want to talk about, what's really interesting is the USGA is the largest funding mechanism for turfgrass research. So all of us agronomists, we're doing what we do out in the field, but when you're paying for our services, you're not even paying for us. Your money's getting invested back into turfgrass research. So, you're not just getting a visit, you're doing a lot more with that. And this year, we've actually reached over $50 million funding turfgrass research to improve your facilities. So what is our objective as the USGA Green Section? I love this quote from 1953. To simplify it, we're all about better turf at lower cost, right? I think you guys want better turf at lower cost at your facilities as well. So try and always remind myself of that. That's our goal, and that's where we should always be striving for. And then I love this slide, just because I like to start with it. So the vision of the USGA, we have 4 pillars, and you can kind of relate to this through your own facility. We want to unify golf. Well, you want to unify your member experience. We want to showcase our golfers. Well, you want to showcase your members as well, through your members and whatnot, as well as your golf course. You want to showcase your golf course. Governance, it's something we'll talk a little bit about today and how to communicate. And of course, advancing. You always want to make your facilities better, more efficient, and be a good steward. So what's important, right? What do golfers really want? You want to maximize the golf experience. Slide got jumbled. Right, so what's important to you as a golfer? And for me, this sums it up right here. It's actually kind of funny. This is an older picture. These are my kids. This is what I love about golf. I love being social, love being outside. This is like the perfect experience for me in playing golf with my kids. So, I had unique experience. So I was a superintendent at a little private club for 15 years. And when COVID happened, I happened to be the senior manager. And we didn't have a general manager, so I had to take the lead and really work through where we were. And as a club, we were stagnant for a very long time. And then right before COVID, we were bringing in members, we were trying to grow, and then COVID happened, and we had to work through that. And then, as many of you, green chairmen, board members, general managers can relate to, there was a pot of money. There was interest in playing golf and new members, and where we were stagnant for a long time. And then, all these other board members wanted to fight for this new pot of money, and we had to really work through that. And I stepped in and I said, let's wait a minute here. Let's really evaluate, what do we need to do from here? We don't need to just go out and start spending a bunch of money, right? We want to maximize the golf experience. That's what's most important for our long-term future. So this was kind of a list of things that we kind of came up with, because we were at that point. We brought in all these new members, we had all these old members, and we had a good cross-section of people that we could actually query and say, hey, what's important about maximizing your experience? And we had all these different things here, you know, from just, I want to be able to easily get a hot cup of coffee, right? I want to be greeted well. And we've all heard the surveys where, you know, what's most important to members is, well, a well-conditioned golf course. Well, that's true. That's very true. But it's also, you know, providing consistent playability, right? Having opportunity. So, you know, really talking about that and really making that our focus, really wanted to get away from this maximizing rounds, but maximizing experience. And through that, one quick story about that. So, kind of through these conversations about maximizing experience, you know, one of these other board members was really hot and heavy about replacing the clubhouse carpet. Very, you know, clubhouse carpet's been 15 years old. It was probably due. And kind of we stepped back from that, and then what we found is that the carpet had never been cleaned in 15 years. So we ended up spending a bunch of money just having a professional come in and cleaning. And I didn't realize it at the time, but what we were doing is we took a step back and we made time for maintenance of the carpet of the clubhouse, as opposed to ripping it out and completely replacing everything. So sometimes you need to do that. So what's the challenges to optimizing a golf experience? Well, you know, how consistent is your golf course going to be if every Monday you have an outing, every Tuesday you have 18-hole shotgun, every Wednesday is a 9-hole lady shotgun, Thursday is senior day, every other Friday we're going to do a 9 and 9, right? You have all these different events you have to work around. There's play first thing, and you have to get the golfers out. So, you know, on the staff, on the golf course maintenance staff, there's all these different things and jobs that need to get done before play, right? So it's not easy to just say, you know, let's just go out there and get after it and play as much as we want. That's not what's best for your golfer experience. You know, this is a list of just first assignments. These are things that need to get done before play can really, before play can start. And one of the things that comes up a lot on our visits is just talking about, you know, closing down for part of a day to be able to get some of these things done, get some of these other things done. So, you know, some superintendents started this hashtag Maintenance Monday and really promote what all gets done on a Monday when the golf course is closed for half a day or a full day. And I think that goes a really long way. It gives a good picture of why we need to do that. You know, there's, as listed here, we have a bunch of tasks that are pretty commonly completed in succession, right? You have to clean off the greens, sometimes you're vertic cutting or grooming, and then you got to mow or you're brushing, and then you got to do the collars and approaches. So then you can do a venting or a needle tining, then a top dressing, and then if you need applied amendment, and then water it in. And these things need to be completed in succession, and it takes a long time to do it. It takes a lot of labor to do it. So having these blocks of time to be able to do this is going to minimize disruption, but it's also going to provide better and really good playing surfaces. And then after that, you know, there's then time to complete your small projects. You know, it's a good time to apply your plant health products, and that way you don't have to do spraying through play, and just catch up on a lot of these things. And another one is that even when we don't have to do all these different things, it's just a really good and productive time to catch up on just mowing rough. You know, in springtime, maybe you have your greens are aerated and they just need to heal. Well, you can just catch up on rough, catch up on all these other activities. So closing your golf course for a half a day or a day, it's really, 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 really productive and a really good way to improve the quality of your golf course and, of course, your golfer experience. So some of the problems with that is certainly, you know, rounds are up. Everybody wants to play. Again, we've been in that let's maximize rounds. Let's not look at maximizing experience. You know, so this is where we've been. So back when I got into business in the Tiger boom, things were really good, and then we kind of plateaued for a while. And then I became superintendent in 2008. Had my first daughter was born in March of 2009, exactly when the stock market completely crashed. So I was a first-year superintendent, a new father, had a new mortgage on a house, and had to ride through that recession. And then as the shows and rounds, I mean, that was kind of the trajectory of a lot of clubs. It just, things weren't fun for a long time. Then we had COVID, and had no idea what was going to happen. But look, right now, you know, rounds are up, and last year rounds went up again. That's pretty amazing. So I think we're in a good spot. But one of the other problems that comes up very, very often is the finding labor, right? So we have more and more rounds. We want to keep these golfers engaged, but we also can't find employees. I think some of that is easing up. However, you know, this is just a bunch of different articles written on the Green Section Record website about all the different issues with the labor that we've experienced the last couple of years. And I think one thing that's helped this is superintendents have done a really good job with just promoting this problem, and that the other thing we learned is to relate it, right? Because every member thinks their golf course is special, right? A special place, everybody wants to be here, everybody wants to work here. Well, what we found is that's not true. Believe it or not, employees want to get paid really well. So we've done a good job of explaining that, you know, the same labor required to maintain your golf course is very same labor that's, you know, mowing your lawn at home and doing high-end landscaping tasks. And once you start relating the pay rates and the work-life balance and all these things, then you realize, a lot of clubs realize that, yeah, you gotta pay what a competitive wage is going to be so that you can actually find labor and retain that labor. And I've seen a lot of that ease up in the, just recently in the last year or so. Hopefully that'll improve. So I'm gonna talk about some common pitfalls as it relates to maintenance. And one of those is, you know, aeration. Who here loves aeration? Nobody, right? Believe me, if superintendents didn't have to aerate, we wouldn't. It's one of the most common topics of discussion we have when it comes to our consulting business. How can we optimize it? How can we minimize the disruption? You know, some of the comments you always get, you know, turf looks fine. I like it. Why do we have to mess it up? Why do we got to, you know, put holes in it in the sand, and why, right? Well, here's why. So this is down in the Dallas area, and this is one of the scariest pictures I took all of last year. So this club about 20 years ago spent a boatload of money. They cored out their fairways. They put in a real nice sandy root zone mix, and then they spent the money to have the whole place sodded to zoysia grass. I believe this is diamond. And from there, they said, okay, great, you know, zoysia grass is slow growing. We're just going to do some solid tine aeration and verticut it and top dress it and let it go. It's going to be good, right? Well, it was good for a long time. Excuse me. The problem was, you can see a really dark layer. So when they sodded it, they never pulled a core out, right? So this heavy sod, thatchy layer just got buried. So years and years of just the verticutting through that layer and solid tining through that layer. Roots were able to get through it, water was able to penetrate it, but it never removed that kind of oozy, dark, nasty layer. So as the surface built up over time, those solid tines weren't able to continue to penetrate that layer. And that layer just kind of oozed together, and it created a bathtub. So now the water just hits that layer and just lays right there. And as you can see in the picture with the white line around it, that's a low-lying area in the fairway. Plenty of sand underneath it, but it got sealed off from the bottom. And this is because they just weren't addressing that layer. You know, they didn't make time for it. So now, 20 years later, they want to do a shallow tine aeration, or even a shallow core aeration. You're not helping anything. You're not going to get through that layer. So now they're actually going to have to tear everything up and actually rebuild, because they've never addressed the layer from construction. So here's another one. So here all the time, there's different sand injection practices you can do. These are very little, minimally disruptive, right? They're great, right? Well, they can be, absolutely. The thing is, if you look at the one picture, it's a big teardrop there, one big teardrop. At the top inch there, all of the sand that they're blasting in to the surface, into the profile, they're blasting through that heavy organic accumulating area, right? So organic matter accumulation is all the leaves and the roots, all of those things that as they senesce and die and they accumulate, it becomes this spongy material, right? So that's why we get ball marks and we see spike marks, and it holds water so they're not firm, and then we have disease issues. Well, so this one shows that, yeah, you can use some of these less disruption practices, but if you're not blowing sand into the organic matter layer, you're not really helping yourself. You're actually going to seal that off. And you'll see the other picture with the two bright white spots. That's where the machines that they're using are actually working really well. So this is actually a championship site, and you'll see the red line, that was the original construction, USGA mix, and you'll see how it's darker in between the red line and the black line. Well, that's where they were doing their traditional core aeration, right? You can see the blasts of white, and it looks pretty good. But what's really interesting is something that's gotten some new traction is if you look above the black line, how it's brighter, whiter, is more sand incorporated. Well, how did they do that? Well, they actually bury their greens every spring in sand, and then they solid tine it 3 different ways. So they're actually burying the greens in sand, and then they'll take and they'll solid deep tine it, and they'll sweep it, and then they'll solid shallow tine it, and then they'll sweep it, and they'll do that a 3rd time, and it just pushes all that sand into the profile. And you can see that they're actually incorporating more sand into the profile through doing it with that practice. Now, this is also done in the spring when the weather is more temperate. You certainly don't want to do it in the summer, but that's their practice. And this is another course. You can see that they're using a bunch of different machines. So these straight lines is actually a vertical blade, cuts a 2 to 4 millimeter channel, injects it with sand. They're putting that sand right at the top inch surface, and then they core it, and then they aerate it and get that sand in there. And again, this is done in the spring. So this course in particular is very aggressive in the spring. They know that the grass is fairly safe, so they're doing it early enough, but yet they know eventually it's going to get warm, so it's going to heal. So then last year, when it was September and they had their week where they were closed, they wanted to do their typical coring and more sand incorporation. It was really, really hot. It was not conducive for tearing up bent grass. So they didn't have to. They didn't. They actually just said, you know what, we're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot. We already did this aggressive aeration in the spring, and they're good. And part of that, you'll see my little snippet there of Dr. Rockwaswa from Nebraska. For the superintendents in the room, if you go to USGA Green Section Record website, there's a really good podcast that explains why we were invested in standardizing organic matter testing. And part of that is, we want to be able to quantify how much sand do we need to be maintaining in the profile, how much organic matter content is okay. And up until now, different labs use different methods. And again, if you're a superintendent, it's worth a listen. It's pretty interesting how we got there and how it's moving forward. And I think it's only like 35 minutes. It's worth a listen. But one of the other parts of Dr. Waswa's research was in cultivation effects. And exactly what I was talking about, they found you can incorporate more sand through solid tine aeration, right? However, one of the things they learned is you can't exclusively perform solid tine aeration. Your actual infiltration rates will slow down. So something to keep in mind, something just interesting. And the research there was just really interesting in that we're starting to see a lot of interest and actual success stories where we're not pulling aggressive cores all the time, twice a year in these things. And there's a fit, and again, this is something that we evaluate on a course-by-course basis. And there's just shows there's just a lot of different ways you can core and solid tine. We know all these things, and the thing is finding the right method and then having the right time to do it goes hand in glove to being successful. And this is just want to talk a little bit about putting green performance, right? So we now have a new tool, and let me back up a second. So we're looking at organic matter content, right? So we don't want the sponginess, we want it to be firm. But we also want to be able to measure the putting green performance, right? So as a green chairman, a board member, you get these things all the time of like, well, the greens are good, the greens are not good. Well, how do we measure these, and can we measure these in more ways? And again, you're getting beat up from other members. Why are the greens not what they should be, or what they think they should be? Well, now we have more data to give you through this new tool that's recently been released, and it can actually measure more things. We can actually measure firmness, and then we also can measure smoothness and trueness, right? So previously, we were only measuring speed. And speed can tell you some things, but it doesn't tell you everything. So now we have this new tool, it's called a GS3, and you can see the little ball there. And it has two accelerometer, it's got a bunch of really cool stuff inside. And what it does is the ball actually measures not only speed, but smoothness and trueness. So it measures how much the ball moves side to side and up and down. What does that mean? Well, we go out and we measure the performance of the putting green with speed, firmness, trueness, and we know what those numbers are. Then we aerate, we top dress, we do these different things. Well, what happens is, well, they've been, we could see these holes forever. Well, you might be able to see the holes, but now we can measure what the ball reaction is actually doing and say, well, yeah, you might be able to see some aeration holes, but the ball is actually reacting much like it was before we aerated, much closer than what we actually thought. So again, as a green chairman, you're getting beat up, like, why do we have to close? Why do we have to do this? Now you have actual data saying, look, we're actually not that far off from where we were before we aerated. And doing other practices as well, again, like the bird cutting and all these things. And just another really useful tool that's coming out there. And what this slide just shows Deacon. Deacon is the app and the web-based platform that all of this information goes into. So basically what Deacon does, we can put our data inputs in a visual platform, and then we can create the custom charts that show these different parameters compared to just weather data and all these different things. And again, it's a really cool one-stop shop to put a lot of data, and again, we can create reports that, again, we can give the board members and general managers to a certain extent to just justify what we're doing and explain what we're doing. So another one that takes a lot of time is things like fertilizing and irrigation, right? So we hear things like, why is the course brown? I can't find my ball, right? You have all these things that are common, they happen every year, you have the same comments. Just a good article, and this picture shows, obviously the ball, it's sitting up, it's got the little wispy grass around it, probably needs some more nutrients, it needs a little more food. And then on the other side, you can even see, if you look real close, the tips of the leaf blades are like serrated, they're ripped. That grass is growing so much that it's just, the mowers just can't cut it very good. And that leads to, losing your ball and all these things. And part of that is, just being able to time your fertilizer applications when the grass needs it, not when the schedule allows it. And that's kind of what we have to keep harping on, is that, the grass has needs when it dictates, not when the golf schedule dictates. So this, what's your number, right? So let me explain this one. So we're talking about moisture levels, right? Brown spots. Why is the course brown? Well, we haven't had rain for five weeks, and that's why. Okay. So this article was written by, let's see, one of the top 3 agronomists in the Northeast. There's only 3. It's by me. Thank you. Appreciate it. So think about it this way: when you have these questions about the brown spots, okay, well, there's the obvious. How old is the irrigation system? What is our water supply? We've had these conversations before, right? Well, take it to a different level. So your irrigation system, over time, yeah, it's going to wear out. We know these things. That's what we call distribution uniformity, right? How does it distribute the water uniformly over the golf course? Well, if you're starting at your golf course, it's completely flat, irrigation system's brand new, and it's in a box. There's no wind, there's no humidity. It can be pretty good. Well, in the real world, we have none of that. We have topography. We have sprinkler heads. They're plastic, and they wear out. Some turn faster than others. Other nozzles wear out. So these things become inconsistent, and you're just naturally going to have disparity. There's also, sprinkler heads throw anywhere from 55 to, 85 feet in a circle, there's variability within that. So what do we have to do? The more time you can spend to even that out, or what we call moisture uniformity, the more time we can take to uniform that out, the more consistent the golf course is going to be, and the healthier the grass is going to be. So think of a slope, and you got a sprinkler head turning, at different speeds. You want to water this high side, you're going to flood the bottom side out before you get the top side wet. So that's where, using things like this little guy to probe, this little red thing with the little probes, that's a moisture meter. They're actually measuring the volumetric water content within the surface of the soil. And you take that and you probe all over the place. Think of a putting green. You have walk-on, walk-off points, right? They're going to get more compacted. You have sand splash from bunkers. So there's naturally going to be a change in uniformity just over time on a putting green. And that's just one putting green. You take that across the golf course. Think about across the fairways. I know out in the Southwest, I was at a club called Paradise Valley in Scottsdale, and it was really interesting. They actually have staff hand probe their fairways. Talk about labor. But out there, when water is your number one concern, that's what they're doing, and they're making the time for it. And so this article just kind of explains some of that. Again, you can find it on a Green Section record, and actually, I wrote it purposefully for at a consulting visit. There was a general manager who had actually asked why we need to do it. So that's why I wrote this article. It's very easy to understand. You can find it there. And the point of the what's your number is, we know the volumetric water content, when it gets to a certain threshold, is it too dry? Do we need to apply more? And that's it. You know what your number is. Another one just talking about, why are there spots? What are these spots for? Why are we getting these? Back 20 years ago, we had this whole thing of IPM, Integrated Pest Management. And I remember there was a big push. It was kind of one of these USGA regional conferences with the Golf Association, and I was there with my green chairman at the time, and they were really pushing this threshold, right? Don't spray, don't apply a fungicide until you see some spots, right? What's your threshold? And it's a spots per area kind of threshold, this whole thing. And I remember he leans over and he says, our threshold is 0. If you want to pay for it, that's fine. I'll spray anything you want to pay for. But and then, of course, we know what it looks like after we get a bunch of rain, especially here. If we get a south and north moving storm that brings up all the spores and all those things, nasty things, and all of a sudden you come out and you think, oh, we got a lot of rain. It should be green and nice. Aren't you happy? And the superintendent's not happy. It's because of, too much water is laying around. We get disease. This picture is actually from my golf course where I was a superintendent. And you can see a pretty definitive line of where we sprayed. And this is a good one. That went right into a Green Committee report. Budget season. Well, where can we cut on fungicide applications? Well, do you want where it's all white and thinned out? Do you want that right next to your fine turf, right next to your fairway? No, nobody does. Well, this is what we're doing. This is why it works. This is why we're doing it. And one of the other things to really point out with these plant protectant and plant health applications, the time to do it is really important, right? So if you're rushed to spray 18 holes before a 9 o'clock shotgun, there's a chance there's going to be a mishap. Like everyone wants to get it done. Everyone is in a hurry, wants to get everything done and present a nice product. However, mistakes can happen. And when you're talking about these expenses, and if you've ever seen a golf course maintenance budget, that's a very high dollar item in the budget, is these different products. And so having time to spray and make these applications effective and efficiently really can go a long way. Here's another one on a different side of things. So this is, we have bent grass contamination in the roughs. So we sprayed a selective herbicide and killed it. You can see the slits from seeding it. This thing takes time. And sometimes, this is where I want to talk just a second about the, when you're sitting on a board, there's a monetary investment to projects, right? And if there's value to it, okay, it's pretty easy to come across. Well, now when you're talking about this topic, we need time for maintenance. Well, there's tee times. Well, as a member, I have an emotional investment in my ability to get on the golf course and see it. You know, we have a lot of members who, you know, spend a lot of money and a lot of time, and, you know, the club championship is the only thing that matters in their world, right? They're emotionally invested. So when you say, look, we want to close down to do this renovation, we just need a couple days or a couple of this or a couple whatever, they actually feel, members feel like you're taking something away from them, that they can't play. Well, you can count in 50 years how many times you played golf on a Tuesday morning, Mr. Finn, but we want to close down an extra day so we can do this, so we can get things healed up. And here's another example. So maybe you've seen these darkened spots in the fairways, and even seen them on greens, roughs, tees. And you know, they may not mean much, but they are aesthetically kind of, you know, what is that kind of a thing? Well, here's a good example. So if you look at the picture with the yellow arrow, you can see all those striations, or there's lines. Those are layers. So there's a little bit of organic matter, there's a little bit of sand, and because of those layers, it creates a lot of problems. Now these are pretty thin, so the grass is growing through it okay. You can see behind that turf sample that, you know, they poke some big holes. One of the issues is that, so those green dark circles, it's a disease called fairy ring, and you need to get the chemical to where the fungus is, right? So the fungus is somewhere in those layers. So it's not as simple as just loading up a fungicide and spraying it. You got to water it in. So you got to spray it, and then you, not only do you have to water it, but you got to work that water in. There's going to be cycles to get that product moved down to where that fungus is. That's not something you can do before a 9 o'clock shotgun. So some of these issues that you're seeing out there, you know, they can be corrected, but here's one that, you know, the problem is underground, you can't see it, and trying to get the curative to it is not easy, and it takes time. Then just to change it up, this is a machine that's really cool. Learned about this one actually at Marion and Cays Valley down closer to home. And this recycler, you know, a lot of golf courses got on this trend of sand top dressing fairways. You saw the previous slide with the layers. Well, with the layers, that impedes water movement, impedes root development. This is a machine that some of these courses are using now to actually cut through. They're actually cutting channels, and then it homogenizes the soil underneath in these channels, and it improves their infiltration and as well as, you know, just health. And it went from having a layer of our native soil and then our sandy or top dressing, those types of things, and trying to homogenize all that. And here's another one. It's another tool. Doesn't necessarily replace anything, but you can see it's pretty disruptive. Now, if clubs like that are making time to do it, there's obviously a benefit to it. And I have seen it, and it's actually pretty impressive in how well it works. But they're making time to do it. So, yeah, this is always my favorite one to talk about. So on both sides of the fence, as a superintendent and an agronomist, we've always been standing there with the committee looking at a bunker and saying, why is this that? Why is that like that? Playability is different. The bunkers are this, the bunkers are that, right? You know, so, you know, I thought I've always done a really good job of saying, well, bunkers are different. Each bunker's different, you know, they're like snowflakes, right? They have, some are exposed to prevailing winds, some are pointed south, right? So they get the sun, they're gonna get drier. And you know, you do this really good explanation of why bunkers are naturally inconsistent, right? And how far does that go in committee? Absolutely nowhere. No one wants to hear that. No, there's bunkers, we just spent money on it, there's sand, it's sand, right? Well, you know, actually a side story to this. So this is interesting, this slide. So this bunker, it was well after a rain event. And this was actually an individual who owned his own 9-hole golf course. Money was not expense. Money was not a problem. He spared no expense. And one of the comments that he made to me was something along the lines of, I'd rather have a sand pit than a money pit, which is kind of alluded to somebody that has a lot of money, obviously passion for golf, was not going to spend money on bunkers. I thought that was just interesting. Right, so everyone wants this. Doesn't this look nice? You know, you got this nice tall grass around the edges, you know, bunkers raked real nice. Well, what happens is then we start playing it. And then it turns to this. Wait, I lost the ball. Well, we can't have this. We can't be losing balls next to bunkers, right? So then it thins out. You can see bare soil. You can see a tree starting to grow. Why? It's because it takes maintenance to maintain these things. This is great. That's great. If you just want to keep weeds out of it, we can do that. That is its own expense. But then when you must start thinning it out to make it now playable, it's really, really challenging to have all of the time to put into it to make it playable and kind of give that wispy look, right? One of the other things why bunkers age differently is, this is actually, designed pretty nice. You can see behind the guy fly mowing, you can get a riding mower pretty close. So it's not awful. Yeah, this is all handwork, but not awful. But what do you see in the bunkers? All those clippings, right? All those grass clippings, and you blow them out, but you're never going to get all of them. So one of the things to keep in mind, bunkers are going to age from any kind of organic matter accumulation. There's research that's shown as little as 3 years, a brand new bunker's infiltration rate can be cut in half. And why is that? Well, here you go. That's, the grass in the bunker right there. That's organic matter. You're not getting all that out of there. That's going to clog up your sand. Here's one. This is actually, I was at the 2018 Ryder Cup in Paris, and let me tell you something. I think some of you architects down here, you need to roll some bunkers. I think it's a great thing that we do this Aussie method, but it's not an architectural thing. I was just poking at them. But we like to do these walled things, and rolling bunker edges to smooth them out is it's a good playability tactic, and it looks really nice. But I don't know if you can quite see it, but what happens is you're not disturbing the soil, or not disturbing the sand. It accumulates algae, and it's another organic matter accumulating issue that's going to slow down the infiltration of your bunkers and age them. And another practice we see that we don't have enough time to properly pull all of the sand out of the bunker, and we just keep dumping sand on top of it, right? So we've heard this how many times? How many times have we heard that, there's no sand in the bunkers, right? So we go out and we dump sand on top of it. Well, this picture shows there's plenty of sand in there. However, where it's darker, that's just where the soil has contaminated it. You got organic matter that's contaminating it. And then we dump, 2 inches of sand on top of it, and your club goes right through it, hits that hard stuff, and it just, there's not enough time to really pour it out and replace the sand. Here's a bunker, you got 9 inches of fresh sand on the floor. 9 inches, that's a lot of sand. And how water moves through sand, you need to put it at certain depths like that. There's a whole methodology to figuring that out, and get into that quite a bit. But bottom line is it takes time to really get that sand right and keep it homogeneous. Labor. So let me talk about this for just a second. Labor is a big topic, started with it. So this is an article on the Green Section Record website, Labor HYA. It's a way in which to calculate your labor needs. What I really like about it is that you can kind of customize to your course. And you don't have to pay attention to all these words, but the highlighted parts are that you list your tasks, you assign the number of labor hours to each task that you need to complete on your course. Some tasks don't fit, so you gotta accommodate for that. There's storm cleanup, there's all these different things, and then you total it up, and then divide the labor by the hours worked, and then that'll give you kind of your full-time equivalent. So this might make more sense. You have your tasks, you have your hours, how many times it's performed, you total all this up, and then you figure out how many hours your staff time actually works. So sometimes you can customize this to just seasonally and break it down that way. And it gives you a good starting point to actually calculate how many bodies you need to do all of the jobs. Another tracking software is these digital job boards. These do a really good job in that at the end of a cycle, a season, what have you, you can actually see how many hours are going to different parts of your golf course. And it really helps with budgeting. Last topic is that comes up all the time is, should projects be performed in-house or use a contractor? Well, here's the questions you need to ask. Is the scope of work reasonable? Can you afford staff burnout? These things need to happen under timelines too often. We just had this conversation this morning of, golfers want their rounds. You don't want to take their ability to play away from them. So, you know, we push these projects into tighter timelines, and then it turns into that, you know, it's really more than what your staff can handle. And the other side of that is, can you pull your staff away? Do you want inconsistent conditions? Because there's no way your staff can continue to provide the conditions they usually provide and do a project. And how does it limit daily maintenance, right? Playing conditions are going to suffer. And then the other aspect of it is your staff might be really good, and I'm sure they're very good at what they do, but do we have time to learn as we go on a construction project? Can we kind of fumble around, and once we get something done and get back, and well, we'll make it right, but you know, there's time to that. So using construction contractors to perform this work, you know, it's what they do. They have the know-how, and a lot of times it's worth their weight to just go ahead and go that route. With that, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll be around all day. Thanks.